I have never had any doubt that Bobby Kennedy Jr. was a patriot.
Yeah.
He has embodied patriotism in everything that he has done, and of course the lineage from which he comes does as well. And so he does not break the tradition of the Kennedys in being a true patriot. I did not think that Trump was a patriot. I saw no evidence of it, nor was I particularly looking for it, if I'm honest, 8 years ago. I assumed it wasn't there, and I didn't see it. He appears, first in the debate, first to my explicit consciousness in the debate, where everyone was talking about Biden's poor performance, which, as we've talked about, was no surprise to those of us who've been seeing what he has become, what a shell of a conscious being Biden has become. What was surprising to me in the debate was Trump's performance, who came across statesmanlike. And I don't know patriotic in particular, but he came across as a man with leadership qualities. And then in this moment on Saturday evening, when he was almost gunned down, there was a whole slew of things, both in his explicit behavior and just in the moment, that felt like he was embodying a patriotism. And it wasn't just that, his base, his long-term base, the people who have been with him from the beginning, were now were seeing the man that they always said he was, but that he seems now to be energized by protecting the country. I didn't see evidence of that before.
Yeah. I want to point to a broader pattern here. And I think it's obvious to me in retrospect, but it took a while to get there. My grandfather used to say something about the Kennedys, and it wasn't terribly generous. He had lots of concerns about their motivations, but he acknowledged that they matured into their roles. He didn't trust them at first, but they won him over, maybe not completely. But
your grandfather, who was born in 1908?
No, he was born in
1913. So just in terms of placing him in the...
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have noticed a pattern amongst the people. We know a lot of extraordinary people at this point. The last 8 years have put us in contact with a tremendous number of people. And I do think a pattern I have seen amongst many of them is that the crucible of the present, of the public eye, of the contentious moment that we live in, either causes you to falter or it causes you to mature. And I have to say, I feel it in myself. I feel it in you, and I see it in many of the people that we now count as friends, and that this is something, the Constitution has to define when you're an adult, just for practical reasons. When are you eligible for the office, that kind of thing, which creates an obviously arbitrary boundary. There are people who are, wise beyond their years, and 35 is longer than you would have to wait, but nonetheless.
And there are others who will never be ready.
Right. There were others. In fact, most people will never be ready.
Right.
But the point is, I think one of the many ways in which human beings break the normal rules for critters is that the maturation process, the physical maturation process, is a little interesting with humans, but it's not very interesting, right? It's fascinating, but it's no more fascinating than,
it's not highly unusual.
Right, a dog or a bird.
It goes on for longer than most others, but...
Yeah, it's got this weird delay in it. And in fact, it is that weird delay that points to the really special thing, which is the cognitive apparatus, which does not abide. In one way, it abides by the normal biological rules where you reach your maximum capacity at reproductive maturity, and then it declines, more precipitously, right? That's true of the conduction velocity of information in the brain. It is not true of the capacity of the mind to think the maturity of the soul, these sorts of things. Those things follow a different trajectory.
And conduction capacity is one measure that is quantitatively true. But it doesn't say anything about connectivity, nor about how much there is to connect.
Right. And so let's just say the brain, if we take the definition, which I've always liked, the mind is what the brain does, right? The brain is a physical object, right? If you die, your brain is still there. We can measure it, weigh it, all that stuff. Your mind is gone, right? The mind is the consequences of brain activity. Some people will argue it's more. I don't see any reason to believe it is, but it is miraculous. But nonetheless, the mind is not the same sort of stuff as the brain. The conduction velocity drops because it has to for evolutionary reasons we won't go into at the moment. But the mind can grow wiser even as the neurons grow slower. And it can, in fact, grow wiser at a rate that much more than compensates for the decline in the rate at which neurons fire messages.
For a while, anyway.
Yeah, for a while. And then, it all fails, ultimately. But it is not terribly surprising to see that there is a maturation process amongst people who are faced with profound challenges and difficult questions, that you actually continue to get better over your entire life. If you have the right stuff, you continue to get better over your entire life at figuring out how to look at those things. And so we do expect wisdom to grow. And then maybe as, at the very end of your life, you get less good at doing anything cognitive, including wisdom. But that, you would expect an old person, if they had seen relevant stuff, to be wiser about it. So anyway, this general pattern is there. And I guess it's not terribly, clearly Bobby Kennedy has matured, right? He went through some really bad stuff, which he's fully ready to acknowledge. And he's become, this marvelous human being. It wouldn't be terribly surprising if all the things that Trump has been put through are causing him to mature also.